the Eastern patient and the Western patient. Without compliance, all effort is useless and in vain. Traumatized patients, despite of having a strong motivation in general to change their faith and either go back to normal, to the time before, or start living their life. So far I haven't lived. I did not even age as I kept myself away from all times and life itself, quoting from a patient. In India, patients in general do not observe these drastic rapid changes in emotions during the Ayurveda treatments. Most Indian patients are in steady family relations till now, regularly daily life rhythms, set aims and even regular meals. Following a doctor's advice is more likely the common rule in India than in the West. Paying respect to elderly and more experienced people is a pillar in Indian societies, and I quote societies as a tribute to the many different cultures, even inside India, yet they do have the respect for the elderly in common. The Eastern patient is less likely to invest money in a project, like seeing a doctor in order to get healthy, if they sabotage then the outcome themselves. Yet this behavior is unfortunately very common in the West. In particular, traumatized patients practice consciously as well as unconsciously something we call self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is a massive hindrance in the journey of recovery. However, the discovery that the embracing motherly kindness of the Ayurveda treatments and the soothing breathing techniques from yoga made a difference in future compliance. The patient generally felt encouraged to try again. If they fall off the wagon, they got support to be up again nevertheless. Punishment, devaluation, humiliation, guilt and shame are absent in Ayurveda and yoga treatments. Patients started feeling valued again and cared for. From this new feeling of self-appreciation, soothing and self-care can arise, which opens the way to recovery. Different from psychiatric medicine prescription, the patient get enabled to perform self-control by positive feedback and never a negative judgment. Self-empowering without pressure and without expectations is that the feeling of being connected to a meaningful life and feeling appreciated changes the patient's common assumption that the world is an unpleasant place. Many patients came back after years just to inform me that the openness to them changed their feelings toward themselves, and therefore they discovered that they actually want to be good to themselves, that there is no point after being damaged to continue self-sabotage. The way to recovery is through self-appreciation and meaning-making through positive feelings and the cultivation of self-care within a system that provides answers is definitely a powerful alternative to medication. However, other therapy models can be used supportively. Most are not needed, as Ayurveda and yoga presenting a richness and diversity of therapy modules within a context that these just need to be rediscovered and used for the benefit of the patient. Coming to the aspect of yoga therapy, in particular the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and the wisdom in the context of trauma. In this section, the inquiry of the mind through breathing and asanas as tools for self-observation, endurance, stamina and resilience are the focus. As yoga has become so popular in the West, it thrives here for a constant authentication through stories and rumors, not, however, a diligent and dedicated practice to self-inquiry. Self-optimizing is often a hindrance on the way to self-knowledge. Self-optimization does two things. It brings people into a stressful practice, and there's always something to achieve. It takes away contentment. Second, the idea of self-optimization stops people with lower self-esteem to even start. In the Practice Society of Friends Berlin, we have seen an unproportionately high number of burnout patients who had undergone a yoga teacher training compared to other professions. However, they again reported a massive stress as the pattern of low self-esteem, overflowing self-expectation, etc., continued to havoc those patients. Yoga classes, Namaste and Trauma. The role of yoga teaching and therapy of trauma in context. Cited from Gandhi, 2017. The origins of yoga can be traced back to South Asia, a space colonized by the British and Portuguese. The reasons why yoga became popular and why various Indian yogis started traveling to England and the United States to sell yoga is also tied up with colonialism. Yoga was often used as a tool to show the British that Indians were not backwards or primitive, but that their religion was scientific, healthy, and rational. This was a position they were coerced to, and unfortunately, we find colonial forms of knowledge, that knowledge must be proven or scientific to be worth anything. Beyond its utility, yoga became popular in part because it reinforced European and Euro-American ideas of India. Early Indian yoga missionaries played on the Orientalist construction of the West as progressive and superior and the East as spiritual but inferior. Yoga became and remains a practice which allows Western practitioners to experience the idea of another culture while focusing on the self. The Rosenberg Academy in Bierstein, Germany is an example of a safe space where students can study in a sheltered environment while pursuing their yoga education and the related Ayurveda Yoga Chikitsa. Martin Mittweder offers a lifelong guidance in the field, a controlling network of teachers. The head work of the academy as well as office workers is open for suggestion and complaints. The Ayurveda concepts of care and shelter are the pillars on which the yoga trainings can unfold safely. The Yoga Sutras. The Yoga Sutras are nowadays the standard of yoga education in the West. However, their deep essence is often not understood, as the capitalization of yoga in Western countries is often dominating the inner spiritual experiences. For therapy purposes, the sutras airy milestones in the understanding of the function of the mind and how to influence patterns of behavior. The Yoga Sutras are one of the oldest texts on yoga which are available today in the English-speaking public. The sutras have been translated into hundreds of languages. Other ancient scriptures are the Garanda Samhita, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the Shiva Samhita. The Bhagavad Gita, as part of the huge historical epos, the Mahabharata, is to mention as a text of yoga as well. Besides Patanjali and the Gita, most texts are either not well translated yet, or the topic of yoga has not got the popularity of the sutras yet. The sutras are giving detailed advices how to observe the mind, and there are no guidelines for physical practice. The only position is basically the seat. However, the sutras of Patanjali are very complex in the original Sanskrit language. Sanskrit allows and offers a lot of space for interpretations, analysis, and speculation. Nicholas Sutton, in his book The Patanjali Sutra, says, one of the main problems confronting anyone seeking to get an insight into the teaching of the Yoga Sutras is that English translations vary so dramatically from one to the other, to the extent where it can be very difficult to properly determine exactly what Patanjali does and does not say. He continues, in the Yoga Sutras, we find virtually no verbs are employed, and it is left to the reader to fill in the implicit meaning, which is deemed to be self-evident. The problem is, of course, To the modern reader, the meaning is often by no means self-evident, and the teaching of particular passages is therefore rendered obscure. The instructions are about the practice of controlling chitta vritti. It is a very systematic course outlined from where to begin in order to reveal the truth. Patanjali is strictly emphasizing diligent self-study. The eightfold path, Ashtanga Yoga, not to be mixed with the yoga style by Pattabhi Jois, is therefore to be understood as an instructional text for self-observation and self-practice. The different chapters are dealing with the inquiry into the nature of the mind. The mind is described in its all faculties, how each aspect is functioning within the framework of the I, the ahamkara, and how each aspect is connected to other aspects. How to control the function of the mind through yoga, the scientific approach that Patanjali has laid out as a path of liberation. Is not all yoga therapy by its very nature, we ask? Jung, the psychologist and philosophist, says there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Is not all yoga therapy in its very meaning of healing as it brings light into the dark corners of the self? It is and it is not. Yoga therapy, as it is used in the treatment of trauma, distress, anxiety or broken shoulder, chronic pain syndrome, slip disc, etc., is not at all aiming for liberation of the self. The goal can be much smaller than self-liberation. It can be only a relief from symptoms and a way to control arousals, increase resilience, create a peaceful state of mind, increase stamina and flexibility. However, the word yoga is used as a number of techniques from the Eightfold Path are used in order to improve the patient's health and overall well-being until finding the truth. The question can be asked, if Patanjali is dealing explicitly with the liberation from the fluctuations of the mind, and therefore achieving a mental equilibrium and peace, further to be experienced as samadhi, why is there even yoga therapy? Yoga, again, is a word that has undergone a shift in its meaning on its journey to the West. Widely understood in the Western country, widely understood and mostly misunderstood in the Western countries as an exercise regime with some diverse spiritual background, and has become what my yoga teacher Mitchell Bly from New York called household yoga. Besides a discussion what real yoga is, it is remarkable how much already tiny bits of yoga science can change a person's life's perspective, feeling, response, pain reduction, meaning making, recovery or resilience, or even healing on a physical or mental level. The International Association of Yoga Therapists lays possible improvements like the following. The 7 goals of yoga therapy, adapted from the International Association of Yoga Therapists, quote, first, eliminate, reduce or manage symptoms that cause suffering. Second, improve function. Third, help to prevent the occurrence and reoccurrence of underlying causes of illness. 4. Move toward improved health and well-being. 5. Change our relationship to and identification with unhealthy conditions. 6. Empower people to be their own best teacher and healer. 7. Teach, share and guide yoga in a way that supports and inspires others to be as awake, vibrant and filled with the awe in every moment of life. From Mark Stevens. So yoga therapy is not only using Patanjali's clear and sophisticated layout to discover the secrets of the mind. Yoga therapy has become an open playground as well for the interpretations and trial and success or loss. Rooted in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are several schools like the one in Mysore, Chennai, India, run by Desikachar, Mohandas and several other teachers. BKS Iyengar and thousands of unnamed teachers developed their very own and unique styles of treating patients with yoga and yoga therapy. Even as Patanjali states, if yoga should be only practiced when the person is physically and mentally healthy and at their best, the term yoga therapy then justifies the adaptation of the rolled out techniques for minor purposes compared to liberation, like pain control. Mark Stevens rules out the yogic framework for health and typically rooted in philosophical notions of spiritual being, in which the condition of any human being is seen as a manifestation of larger forces in the universe. Just what these forces are and how the manifest is given widely varied descriptions across the landscape of the yoga literature and practices, with literally thousands of philosophical, psychological, and spiritual concepts and terms. Mentioning the Yoga Sutras in an Ayurvedic context on trauma is sensible to do, as it fills a gap. The gap is the one of psychology, or better, the analysis of the function of the disturbed or non-disturbed mind. As Professor Ram Manohar states, there is no Ayurvedic psychology, there is only Ayurvedic psychiatry. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, though, are an accurate guideline to discover how the mind works and how to control the movement of thoughts and linked emotions. The present case studies in the next chapter are showing emotional disturbances and uncontrolled movement of the mind in the traumatized patient. Yoga therapy has been added to the Ayurveda treatment plan successfully and supported the goal of a peaceful mind. Through the techniques of yoga, it was possible to design treatments in my clinic that allow the patient to continue the work of mental control. Discovering self-lies, patterns of avoidance, roots of denial, fear and anxiety by simply breathing and creating awareness in a pose, asana, is a simple and effective method. Meditation, dhyana, as well as retrieval from the senses, pratyahara, in combination with posture, asana, and breathing, pranayama, are faculties that can be of great use in the treatment of trauma and PTSD. Unlike most Ayurveda treatments, should preferably be applied by a therapist for traumatic injuries in PTS, like Abhyanga Chirodhara, the patient here is able to practice themselves at any time and place. Yoga empowers the patient to actively contribute to the treatment process in the sense of recovery and resilience. The Yoga Sutras by Patanjali, an attempt for clarification of used terms. The original Sanskrit text will have an outline guidance of interpretations of Nicholas Sutton from Oxford Hindu Study Center. Modern yoga would not exist without the dedicated work of Krishnamacharya. He has claimed that he discovered ancient scriptures that introduced him to a special yoga practice. His three today most popular and influential disciples were Mr. B.K.S. Iyengar, who established a style of precise asana alignment and the use of props, certain tools that are helpful to achieve steadiness in a posture, even without having the full physical capacity to do so. Sri Patabi Joyce, the founder of the Ashtanga Yoga practice, a standardized sequence-based practice, and Desikachar, Krishnamacharya's own son, who developed a gentle, individualized, therapeutic style with psychological sensitivity called Vini Yoga. Quote from Nicholas Sutton: "One of the main problems confronting anyone seeking to get an insight into the teachings of the Yoga Sutras is that English translations vary so dramatically. In the Yoga Sutras we find virtually no verbs, so we will here try to continue with a reading from the sutras.